anytime an owner gets overly involved, just think Jerry Jones, obviously the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. He's highly involved. Woody Johnson, right? He's up there with the Jets. He's panicking, just doing whatever Aaron Rodgers wants him to do. And they're 2-6, probably going to be 2-7 after tonight. When owners get involved, nothing good happens. Things just don't go well. So I think Jim Irsay getting involved isn't a good sign. Okay, Jim Irsay's been around a long time, right? His dad owned the Colts and he's been the owner for a long time. But my question is like what's the point in hiring a coach if you aren't going to let him coach? Like Jim Irsay compared Shane Steichen to Don Shula, the winningest coach in the history of the NFL. Right? That was what, 2 months ago? 2.5 months ago? And then, not very much time later, because 2.5 months in the grand scheme of things is not very long. He was like, you know what, Shane, you don't know what you're doing. Put Joe Flacco in. It's an interesting thing. I don't know. I do think that in the long run, this is going to be a good thing for Anthony Richardson. And if you don't believe me, Anthony Richardson has already learned how to lie to the media.
He just told me that they were going to go with Joe, and that was that. And, I just had to, just take the information and just grow.
Anthony Richardson right there responding to the question of, do you know why you were benched? And he said no. And that's just not true. There's no way that Shane Steichen didn't give him an explanation as to why he got benched. Okay, I know everyone's saying it's not because of the tapping out play or anything like that, but it is. Dan, the show after mine from noon to 3, he got a text yesterday during a show from someone that, that kind of knows what's going on with the Colts, saying that Jim Irsay wanted to bench Anthony Richardson because of that, and that's not what leaders do. And I get it. It's a terrible look, and the face of your franchise can't do that no matter how young and naive they are. That's really why Anthony Richardson's being benched. He just doesn't understand what it means to be an NFL quarterback and the face of a franchise. Okay. And look, hopefully Anthony Richardson learns from it. But that being the reason why Anthony Richardson got benched is a little different from other young quarterbacks that we've seen get benched before, right? And since, the benching of Anthony Richardson happened, there's been conversation around, will he start another game for the Indianapolis Colts? I think no. Right, the history of the NFL tells us that when young quarterbacks get benched, like they don't usually play again for that franchise. Sometimes they'll get traded away and they'll have a resurgence somewhere. Think, Sam Darnold, right? But there is a difference with Anthony Richardson being benched compared to these other guys. Bryce Young, Zach Wilson, Kenny Pickett, and so on, all got benched because they just aren't very good at football. Right, and they didn't show enough upside to justify, hey, a few more games and maybe they'll put it all together, right? They were really bad for a long stretch of games. And when you look at Anthony Richardson, that's just not the case. Okay, he was bad for a much shorter stretch of games, right? Really only 7 games where he started and finished them. Was he bad? Yes, I'm not saying he was good. But he had some big flashes, right? There were moments where it's like, okay, I can see why the Colts drafted him. I can see why they think he could turn into a big deal at some point. As we all know, in the Houston Texans game, his receivers didn't help him out a ton, right? And Shane Steichen's not dumb, right? Like he can watch the film and realize all of the shortcomings of the team around Anthony Richardson. I don't think Anthony Richardson's being benched because he's been bad. Okay, he's being benched because he's 22 and he doesn't understand what it means to be the face of a franchise. And because that's why he got benched, I think there's a greater chance for him to start again for the Colts. Right? There's been discussion around Anthony Richardson throughout the entire year of, can you become more accurate as a passer? And when Anthony Richardson starts playing games again, whether that's here in Indianapolis or in Seattle in 3 years or whatever it is, like that'll continue to be a debate. I think you and I would both agree, though, that people tend to become more mature as they get older, and bad things happening, failure happening, like getting benched for a 39-year-old journeyman quarterback, usually quickens the maturation process. Okay, so because Anthony Richardson was benched due to a lack of understanding of what it is to be a quarterback in the NFL, that gives me slightly more hope that he'll play again in a Colts uniform. It just won't be this year, right? He just needs time to grow up and not be naive. And being, the second youngest starting quarterback or former starting quarterback in the NFL behind Drake May, who's 21, when he's 23, 24, when he's the age of Jaden Daniels, who led a college locker room for 6 years, when he's the age of Caleb Williams, who led a college locker room for 4 years, like when he kind of just grows up and matures, hopefully he'll be able to do those off the field things that are important when you are a starting NFL quarterback. But he's not right now. He's going to have an opportunity to sit behind a guy in Joe Flacco, who's played a lot of football. All right, a guy who's played a ton of football, and he is the theme for this week. If you've been tuning into the show, then you know that on Thursdays, we always give some sort of title to, whatever game is coming up. And for this Colts Vikings game, the title is Joe Flacco, the season savior, Indianapolis edition. The Colts decided earlier in the week to bench who is seen to be the future of their franchise, Anthony Richardson. The 22-year-old athletic freak was benched for off-the-field reasons, it appears, for the 39-year-old NFL journeyman, Joe Flacco. The 17-year veteran quarterback was put in a similar situation last year when the Browns called him while he was sitting on his couch. Right? He shows up in Cleveland, plays 5 games, and leads them to the playoffs. Even though he didn't play particularly well, completing only 60% of his passes, throwing 13 touchdowns and a whopping 8 interceptions in 5 games, he was able to help lead the Browns to a 4-1 record as the starter. We will ignore the catastrophic playoff performance to keep the vibes up for the Colts' new starting quarterback. The Colts have gotten a taste of the Joe Flacco experience so far this year as he came in and helped the Colts hold on to a lead against the Pittsburgh Steelers and secure the win. He led them to a win over the terrible Tennessee Titans, and he got hot late against the Jacksonville Jaguars and put up good numbers. The Colts made this move because they apparently want to win now. Seems like, however, this was more of a Jim Irsay move. The Colts are going to the adult in the room who's currently the better quarterback, and hopefully that translates to more wins. And it needs to happen Sunday. The Colts need to start stacking wins. They sit at 4-4, and they're entering a tougher part of their schedule. They got the Vikings on Sunday Night Football, a team that's lost back-to-back games after starting 5-0. And there's a belief floating around out there that the experience that Joe Flacco has will allow him to do a better job than Anthony Richardson would have at identifying blitzes from this Vikings defense that blitzes more than any other team in the NFL. And that might be true. But whether he identifies the blitz or not, he still has to move around very well because this Vikings team is going to blitz. And there's going to be no Bernard Raymond on Sunday night. How does the protection hold up for the immobile quarterback? That is one of the two, I think, biggest storylines for this Colts offense in this game. Okay, the Colts offensive line allowed a 64% pressure rate against the Houston Texans last week with their starting left tackle, Bernard Raymond, playing the whole game. If that continues, that 64% pressure rate, if that continues, the Colts have no chance of beating the Vikings, and they will get embarrassed in front of the entire country. Okay, that is one of the two major storylines for the offense in this game. How do they handle the Vikings and all of the pressures that they're going to throw at them? Okay, we've seen, a Joe Flacco-led Colts offense. They threw the ball 30-plus times in both games that Joe Flacco started. Okay, so the Vikings are going to have opportunities to generate sacks because Shane Steichen likes to throw the football. The other part of the game when it comes to the Colts offense that I'm interested to see is if the Colts can run the ball. Their run game won't be nearly as good as it was with Anthony Richardson, okay? Because the Vikings don't have to worry about Anthony Richardson running the ball anymore. Okay, say what you want about Anthony Richardson, whether he should or shouldn't have been benched. You and I can both agree that Anthony Richardson helped the Colts run game tremendously. Okay? Like the Colts are trading the success that they've had in the run game for hopefully more success in the pass game by going from Anthony Richardson to Joe Flacco. Their lowest yards per carry, the Colts, their lowest yards per carry in a game this year, where Anthony Richardson played the whole game, was 4.2. Okay, that is a good, solid rushing attack. And that's the worst that they were, right? They've had, like, against the Houston Texans, between Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, they were at 6.3 yards per carry. Okay, the run offense with Anthony Richardson in is better than when Joe Flacco was in. The two games that Joe Flacco started and finished, between the two games, the Colts averaged 3.7 yards per carry. That is not very good. That's not good at all. Right, so by going to Joe Flacco, the Colts are sacrificing having a better run game for having a better passing game. And look, the basis of any good offense, okay, like when you look at the best offenses in the NFL, they can all run the football. Okay, like when we look at the 49ers and we think about Kyle Shanahan and we think about Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and, Christian McCaffrey can run out wide and he can run routes. The reason why the 49ers offense with Kyle Shanahan is so good is because they can run the football. When you look at the Chiefs, it's the same thing. Think about Mahomes and Travis Kelce and the trick plays and all these things. Guess what the Kansas City Chiefs do really well? They run the football. Okay, when you look at the Lions and you think about Ben Johnson and Jared Goff just not throwing incompletions since week 4, and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams, it's like, flashy weapons. Their offensive tackles score touchdowns sometimes. Yes, that's what we think about. But the Lions run the football incredibly well. That is what the best offenses in the NFL do. Okay, and look, the Colts have arguably the best running back in the NFL right now because Christian McCaffrey isn't playing. And I think it's very easy to be like, we have Jonathan Taylor. They're going to be fine running the football. That's just not the case. The offensive line's banged up. It's slowly gotten worse as the year has progressed. This Vikings defense is good. And Anthony Richardson played a major role in the run game. Okay, like that was the biggest asset that he gave them, not just in terms of avoiding sacks, but being able to run that read option and pull the football and take off whenever he wants, or being able to drop back, look at the defense and be like, everybody's covered. Let me run and pick up 5 yards. That was the biggest asset that Anthony Richardson gave the Colts, and they don't have that anymore. Whatever you think of Richardson, whether you think he's great, whether you think he's going to be great, whether you think he's bad and could be great, whether you think he's bad and he's always going to be bad, you are going to notice his absence when the Colts run the football. Okay, now, the switch could totally be worth it if Joe Flacco comes out and he continues to throw the ball well like he has so far this year. But given Joe Flacco's history, that is simply not a guarantee. Okay, but Joe Flacco he's got a real opportunity to come in and help a decent Colts roster go 9-8, maybe 10-7, and make the playoffs. And sadly, here in Indianapolis, making the playoffs and losing in the first round is now considered a good season.